During our big staff meeting, my supervisor cackled, if she ever left, we'd probably get more done, not less. Everyone laughed as I shrunk into my seat. I said nothing. 2 weeks later, when I handed in my resignation, along with the passwords only I knew for critical systems, they begged me to stay. I politely declined. Their panic was music to my ears. I was the one person everyone forgot, until I wasn't. I used to work at a logistics tech company in Blue Ash, a suburb just outside Cincinnati, Ohio. We handled supply chain software for mid-size companies. Not glamorous, but the money was steady. I started right after college, stayed for 8 years. I never asked for promotions. I didn't need attention. I just wanted to do my job right and go home. My name's Dana. I ran all the systems. Not officially, but that's what it turned into. Our actual IT team was cut years ago during some cost optimization wave. When the last guy left, they dumped everything on me. At the time, I didn't complain. I liked having control. I figured I was helping. I had access to everything, every password, every server, every user credential. I set up the backups, the automations, the licensing renewals. I wrote the scripts that kept things running. If something broke, I fixed it. If no one noticed, I did my job right. I didn't keep it all to myself on purpose. No one ever asked how it worked. They just trusted I had it handled. That trust cracked apart one morning during our quarterly staff meeting. We had these meetings in the biggest conference room. Cheap donuts, weak coffee, folding chairs lined up facing a projector. Maybe 40 of us there. The higher-ups stood in front like they were presenting a TED Talk. Melanie, my manager, always took the mic. She liked the spotlight. Melanie was polished. Blonde bob, fitted suits, a voice that was always on. She managed our department like it was her own PR campaign. Her idea of leadership was delegation and taking credit. When things went well, it was her win. When things went wrong, someone else got blamed. I didn't like her, but I kept my head down. That day, someone asked a simple question about streamlining workflow. I wasn't even paying full attention. Then Melanie said, loud and clear, into the mic, honestly? If Dana ever left, we'd probably get more done, not less. And she laughed. A few people chuckled. Some laughed loud. A few looked at me with wide eyes like, oh damn. I didn't move. I just stared at the floor, forcing my face to stay blank. I didn't say a word. But in my head, something broke. 8 years of loyalty. Of fixing her messes. Of logging in at 2 a.m. because she forgot to renew the security certificate or approve the monthly patch schedule. 8 years of building things from scratch. Gone, just like that. Written off as a joke. She humiliated me in front of the entire team. No one stood up for me. Not a single word. They just laughed along because that's what you do when the boss tells a joke. That night, I went home and opened my private network vault. I stared at the architecture I'd built, the infrastructure no one else even knew how to touch. And I made a decision. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't threaten. I'd simply leave. And I'd make sure when I left, they would feel it. The next morning, I quietly typed up a 2-week notice. No emotion. Just facts. Effective 2 weeks from today. I printed it, signed it, and slid it into Melanie's inbox before she even got to her desk. By noon, she called me into her office. She smiled too hard. Wow, Dana. This is unexpected. Are you sure about this? I nodded. We'll be sad to see you go, she said, still with that fake cheer. But I'm sure we'll be fine. She had no idea what was coming. Over the next 2 weeks, I started preparing. Not for them. For me. I wiped all traces of my personal scripts and automation tools. I removed my personal credentials from all system-level access points. I backed up my private logs and access history to a secure drive. I compiled a handover folder that looked full but was missing every critical detail. I replaced master credentials with decoys that would work, until they didn't. The passwords? I didn't hand them over. I waited. I was polite, like always. I trained the intern they brought in as if nothing was wrong. I answered every question with just enough information to sound helpful. But I left every important door half-closed. Melanie didn't ask questions. She thought she was in control. She thought I was just the quiet one. The one who didn't matter. On my last day, I walked into her office with a small box of my things and handed her a flash drive. She looked at it like it was just another thing to toss on her desk. "What's this?" "All the credentials and instructions," I said. "Good luck." She smiled, barely. "We'll be fine." I turned around and left. What she didn't know was that the drive had nothing on it except one .txt file. Just a note that said, "Hope it was worth the laugh." The fallout started on Monday. By Monday afternoon, my phone was already buzzing. First, it was James from the dev team. "Hey Dana, I think something's off with the server logins. Nobody can get in." I let it go to voicemail. Then Emily from finance emailed me. "We're locked out of the reporting tool. Can you resend the credentials?" No. By Tuesday morning, they were in full panic mode. Melanie left 2 voicemails and 3 emails. The tone shifted fast, from fake nice to straight up desperate. "Dana, please, I think there's been some kind of mix-up with the passwords you gave us. Just call me back when you can." Mix-up? No, Melanie. You just never paid attention. I didn't reply. By Wednesday, they realized they couldn't access the cloud dashboards that processed shipping logistics for 5 of their biggest clients. The internal data tools? Down. Ticketing system? Frozen. They couldn't even get into the admin panel for the company email accounts. Why? Because I'd set them up under an authentication process only I could approve. No more me, no more access. Thursday, I got a message from the head of sales. "Dana, if this is about what happened during the meeting, I just want you to know I didn't laugh." Too late. The next week, they brought in an outside IT firm. I know because one of the consultants messaged me on LinkedIn, trying to pick my brain. I ignored him too. The company's main service portal was still down when they sent out a mass email to clients saying they were undergoing emergency maintenance. That was a lie. The truth was, they couldn't figure out how anything worked without me. They had let the one person keeping everything together slip right through their fingers. 2 weeks after I left, I heard through a former coworker, we'll call him Nate, that Melanie had a meltdown during a department heads meeting. Screamed at the CFO. Cried in front of HR. She said something like, she sabotaged us. But I hadn't. Not legally. I didn't delete a single thing. I didn't lock them out of anything. I just didn't hand them the key. They never asked for it. They assumed they didn't need me. Nate told me they begged me to come back as a consultant. "We'll double your rate," they said. "Just help us get everything back online." I never responded. Meanwhile, I'd already started at a new company. Remote. Better pay. Real documentation. Actual team support. And a manager who listens. The best part? Every now and then I still get emails from random people at my old job, trying to piece together how things used to work. I archive every single one. Melanie thought she was making a joke when she mocked me. Thought it was funny to humiliate the quiet one. Now? She gets to live in the chaos I left behind. And I'm not coming back. About 3 weeks after I left, things took a sharper turn. Nate messaged me again, not to gossip this time, but to warn me. "Hey," he wrote. "Not sure if you've heard, but Melanie's trying to blame the whole mess on you. HR's involved now. I stared at the message for a while. I didn't reply right away. I wasn't surprised. She had always been like that, never took blame for anything. But then he sent another message. She said you intentionally sabotaged company systems before leaving. She told HR you left everything encrypted so we couldn't function. And there it was. She was laying the groundwork for something bigger, maybe even legal action. I had to think fast. I knew I hadn't broken any laws. I never changed passwords after leaving. I never deleted anything. I just didn't spoon-feed them the structure they never cared to understand. But Melanie was panicking. She needed someone to blame. Someone to throw under the bus so she could keep her job. That's when I decided to cover myself. I pulled up the private archive I'd kept. Every change I made before leaving. Every instruction I documented. Timestamps. Emails I sent. The resignation letter with the note that said, "Let me know if you need help transitioning." I had receipts. I put everything into a dated folder, backed it up to a secure cloud drive, and sent one email. Just one. To HR. Hello, I was made aware that there are claims I acted in bad faith during my departure. I'd like to clarify, I provided notice, offered to train my replacement, and documented key workflows. I also have logs to support this. I attached 2 PDFs with sample logs and instructions. 2 days later, HR replied. Thank you for your message. We appreciate your cooperation. At this time, no further information is needed. Nate texted me that same day. Melanie got called into HR. She looked wrecked. Something happened. I smiled. Then, about a week later, I got an email I didn't expect. It wasn't from HR. It was from legal. Hi Dana, we'd like to speak briefly regarding the system's transition during your departure. Just routine follow-up. Please let us know your availability. My stomach sank for a second. Then I exhaled. I called a lawyer the next day. We went over everything. She read the logs. Reviewed the documents I saved. She looked at me and said, "You're fine. If anything, they're exposed, not you." That was all I needed to hear. I sent legal a short message, "I'm happy to cooperate. Please note, I am represented by counsel. Let me know if you'd like my attorney's contact info." They never replied. But Melanie? I heard she didn't show up to work the next week. And that was just the beginning. Nate reached out again a few days later. This time, it wasn't about Melanie. He asked me if I'd been watching the company's client news feeds. I hadn't. Check out Phoenix Freight's LinkedIn page, he said. I looked it up. Right there, in a public post, "We're disappointed to announce we've ended our contract with my former employer due to unresolved platform disruptions that affected shipment visibility for our partners. We're moving to a new logistics provider effective immediately." Phoenix Freight was one of their top 3 clients. And now they were gone. I scrolled through the comments. Other companies were chiming in. Some polite, others not so much. One wrote, "Same issues here. Our SLA got breached twice last quarter." Another added, "Support team unresponsive. Had to escalate to legal to get answers." I knew what that meant. All the cracks I'd covered over the years were finally splitting wide open. They had built their whole operation on the systems I maintained. When I left, those systems didn't just stop, they started failing slowly. Scripts timed out. Data integrations failed. Ticket pipelines collapsed. And Melanie, who'd never cared how things worked, was now buried in it. But I wasn't ready for what Nate said next. Melanie's replacement is digging through the logs. New IT guy. He's ex-military. Ruthless. What's he looking for? I asked. Someone to pin the failure on. Rumor is they're trying to argue your logs prove you withheld information. They want to say it was intentional. I didn't panic. I already had my files. And I had that email from HR thanking me. But I felt something else, anger. They were losing clients. They were losing revenue. And instead of admitting they ignored warnings and let one person handle mission-critical systems with no backup, they were still trying to turn me into the villain. I called my lawyer again. She said something that stuck with me: "You've done everything right. But people who screw up like to find a scapegoat. Just make sure your defense is louder than their lies." So I got loud. I sent a letter, not just to HR, but CC'd to the CEO, legal, and the entire executive team. I laid it all out. Dates: I submitted my resignation emails offering to help with transition logs proving every system was operational when I left, documentation I prepared and offered, and most importantly, emails from their own staff asking for my help after I left, which I never responded to. Then I ended the letter with this: "I'm deeply disappointed that instead of addressing internal failure points, there appears to be an effort to shift blame toward me. I will not be a scapegoat for a leadership team that refused to acknowledge the risk of centralized technical dependency. Any further accusations will be handled through my legal representation." I hit send. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was a number from my old company. I didn't answer. Nate texted, "Whatever you just did, it hit like a bomb. People are panicking." But it wasn't over yet. 3 days later, something unexpected happened. A reporter emailed me. Not a big-name journalist. Just a local business columnist for the Cincinnati Herald. He'd picked up the story through whispers in the logistics network. Apparently, some of the clients that bailed had started talking. He wanted to know more about the tech collapse. I didn't reply. But it felt like things were snowballing faster than I expected. Then Nate sent me one last message. "Melanie's gone. They fired her." Quietly. HR told everyone it was a personal decision. But the word is she tried to erase her access logs before she left, and got caught. And just like that, the woman who humiliated me in front of 40 coworkers and laughed while doing it, was out. But I wasn't done watching. Because that company was still crumbling. And someone new just entered the picture with a bigger plan, and I wasn't sure if they were friend or foe. Just when I thought I could move on, a new name started popping up in Nate's messages. Victor Mancini. He was brought in by the board, an outside consultant with a reputation for cleaning up corporate messes. Former CIO at a Fortune 100 company. They gave him the temporary title of Director of Systems Strategy, but it was clear, he was there to hunt. Nate called him the Axeman. Victor wasn't interested in fixing anything. His job was to figure out who was responsible, cut the fat, and make sure shareholders didn't sue. One morning, Nate sent me a screenshot of a Slack message Victor posted in a private team channel: "I want full access to historical system logs. If Dana built it, I want to know how. If she broke it, I want proof." That line hit me hard. I was no longer just a footnote in their disaster. I was the target again. Victor was smarter than Melanie. More methodical. If there were gaps or inconsistencies in my log trails, he'd find them. If I missed a single timestamp, a single thread that could look malicious, he'd spin it. I didn't panic, but I felt the pressure shift. This wasn't about embarrassment anymore. This was turning into something much bigger. Then came the subpoena. It wasn't an official lawsuit. Not yet. But it was a formal request for data and documentation pertinent to the investigation of system operations pre- and post-employment termination. From the company's legal counsel. They were preparing for court. My lawyer immediately responded, citing that I had already provided all voluntary records and reminding them that any false implication of wrongdoing would be treated as defamation. We expected a pause. Instead, we got an escalation. 2 of my former coworkers, people I'd considered neutral, suddenly submitted sworn statements saying I refused to share tools and refused to train anyone before I left. I couldn't believe it. People who used to ask me for help daily. Who sat beside me. Ate lunch with me. Now siding with the company, probably to protect their jobs. I was furious. I dug through my personal backups, screenshots of Slack messages, emails, even handwritten notes from the intern I trained, where he'd thanked me for explaining the data structure. And then I remembered something. Melanie had once asked me to clean up the user audit logs during a system check a year before. She wanted to hide the fact that she hadn't approved a critical patch, which caused a 2-day outage. At the time, I had made a copy of the original logs, just in case she ever tried to blame me. And in those logs? Her name, the ignored alerts, and the direct email where I warned her. She had replied, "Just push it off until next week. I'm traveling." Victor wanted to build a case on me? Fine. I sent my lawyer those files and added one line in the email. If they want war, I've been sitting on the ammunition. That was the day I stopped defending myself and started fighting back. The moment my lawyer sent the counter packet with those logs, everything changed. She forwarded me an internal email that had been accidentally CC'd to her. It was from one of the junior legal assistants at the company, someone clearly out of their depth. The email subject line read, Dana's files, we might have a problem. A problem? Yeah, they did. Because those logs weren't just receipts. They were timestamps, warnings, and full system diagnostics showing I flagged critical failures Melanie ignored. Failures that led to financial damage. If they tried to claim negligence, that evidence made her the negligent one. And by extension, the company. My lawyer smiled when she saw the file trail. This isn't just defense anymore, she said. You have the leverage to flip this. And that's when I made my move. We drafted a cease and desist against the company and named Victor personally. The letter cited defamation, hostile post-employment targeting, and a demand for written retraction of false claims made internally and externally about my role. We gave them 10 business days. Victor didn't back down right away. Instead, he tried to bluff. He reached out through a third-party firm with an offer. A non-disclosure agreement, plus a modest financial settlement, if I would agree not to release any internal logs or speak to any outside parties. That told me everything I needed to know. They were scared. And then I got the call from Nate again. Only this time, he was whispering. You didn't hear this from me, he said, but Victor's been shredding internal emails. Like, purging old threads, disabling access logs, wiping stuff retroactively. It's sketchy. I took a long breath. If Victor was covering his tracks, that meant the situation was darker than I thought. He wasn't just trying to silence me, he was erasing anything that could implicate the company in deeper compliance violations. That's when I realized something I hadn't considered. Melanie's negligence didn't just cost them clients. It may have broken compliance laws tied to vendor data, logistics standards, maybe even consumer privacy. And now I was sitting on all of it. Not just proof of her errors, but proof that management knew about those issues and swept them under the rug. That changed everything. I called my lawyer back and said one thing: I want to go public. My lawyer hesitated for a second. Going public means exposure, for them and you, she said. Once this hits the media, it's not just legal. It's personal. I didn't care anymore. They tried to destroy my name. They let people lie about me. They tried to make me the scapegoat for their own greed and laziness. I had been silent long enough. We didn't go to a national outlet. That would come later if needed. Instead, we reached out to the same local reporter who had contacted me weeks earlier, the one from the Cincinnati Herald. His name was Pete Morales, and he'd already done some digging. When we called, he was ready. You don't even need to sell it, Pete said. I've got vendors off record, ex-clients, former interns. All of them saying something was off. You give me the docs, I'll make sure the truth gets out. I gave him everything, redacted, carefully curated, Nothing that would violate NDA but enough to paint the full picture. Internal logs showing Melanie's ignored warnings. Screenshots of Slack conversations where coworkers mocked me while asking me for help. Emails from executives that clearly passed blame instead of solving issues. Documentation I provided during my exit, ignored. A complete timeline of events. Pete took it all and got to work. The article dropped a week later. One woman held it together, how a quiet tech employee watched her company collapse after a public humiliation. The headline was sharp, but the article itself. Nuclear. It quoted anonymous vendors. It outlined system failures that cost businesses thousands. It listed dates and times of outages that lined up exactly with my departure. It included a screenshot of Melanie's onstage comment. One of the interns had filmed the meeting on their phone and sent it to Pete after reading the article teaser on social media. That clip went viral. Melanie's laugh. The crowd laughing with her. And me, sitting there frozen, shrinking into my chair. It spread across LinkedIn. Then X. Then Reddit. It was in every comment thread from IT pros, engineers, project managers, even people in HR, all saying the same thing: this is what happens when leadership ignores the quiet workers. Victor tried to control the damage. He issued a cold company statement about privacy breaches and inaccurate portrayals of internal operations. But it didn't matter. Because I wasn't alone anymore. The next day, someone from the Department of Commerce reached out to my lawyer. They were interested in compliance lapses. Wanted to ask questions about logistics, data handling, and record retention protocols. 2 days after that, a class action lawsuit started forming from vendors who had lost money when the systems failed. That company was bleeding. But Victor hadn't made his last move. Nate messaged me again, urgent this time. Victor's trying to spin a narrative that you extorted them. That you withheld passwords for money. He's feeding it to legal, trying to position it as cyber extortion. He's serious. That was it. They were done smearing me behind closed doors. I was going to drag every one of them into the light. We laid it all out. The lies, the cover-ups, the smears. Everything was on the table. If Victor wants a war, I told her, he's about to lose it in front of everyone. We went on offense. She filed a defamation suit with documented proof. Every message they twisted, every claim they made against me, each one backed up with logs, timestamps, and real names. She sent cease and desist notices to 3 individuals who submitted false statements. And we filed a formal complaint with the State Board of Labor for post-employment retaliation. 2 days later, Pete released a follow-up article. Update: new evidence shows former employee warned leadership repeatedly. Emails ignored. The piece included parts of Melanie's emails, the ones where she brushed off risk warnings. Pete confirmed them through vendor testimony and backup logs. One vendor even provided his own screenshots of Melanie promising that everything's under control a week before the major outage. The article ended with one line: the company declined further comment. That's when it really started falling apart. Their stock tanked, what little was left of it. 2 board members stepped down. A former client filed a lawsuit directly naming Melanie, the COO, and Victor. But Victor, he tried one last time. He filed a motion claiming I had withheld access for personal gain. Claimed I orchestrated a breakdown to make myself look indispensable. His evidence? That I never returned a master key file, one he never asked for in the first place. I walked into the hearing with my lawyer, calm, collected, and holding a printed copy of the exit email I sent HR. It clearly offered help, outlined transitions, and said exactly which files were available on the handover drive. The judge read it. Read the timestamps. Looked up. This is a complete and lawful resignation. There is no evidence of intent to harm, and the company had ample opportunity to prepare. Case dismissed. Victor didn't look at me. Not once. 3 weeks later, he resigned. No press release. No goodbye memo. Just gone. Melanie? She tried to rebrand on LinkedIn as a freelance operations consultant. The comments under her profile weren't kind. People shared the video of her joke at the meeting. That clip followed her everywhere. As for the two co-workers who signed those false statements, one of them was let go when the lawsuit against the company revealed inconsistencies. The other messaged me privately. Said she was pressured into it. Apologized. I didn't respond. And me? I kept my new job. My reputation stayed intact. If anything, stronger. People reached out to thank me. Other companies asked if I'd consult for them, because we don't want to be the next headline. But even with everything settled, I still think about that meeting sometimes. About how fast people will turn on you. How loud laughter can feel when it's aimed straight at you. I was loyal. I was quiet. I held everything together for 8 years. And when they mocked me, they thought I'd just fade away. But I didn't. I walked away, and they crumbled without me. Not because I wanted revenge, but because they earned it. And in the end, all I had to do was walk out the door and let them live in the mess they created. That was enough.